you've been working out, you've been in the gym consistently, but you can't do the same thing over and over again and expect those same results that you got when you first started out. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of the Better Basics Podcast. I'm Matt Stone. As always, I have my best friend, Dylan Waldhuter. Dylan, I mean, normally it's nice to see you, but I just saw you a couple days ago. So, I mean, it is nice to see you, but, we just got back from an awesome weekend in Madison. So,
Rustin Kelly's show.
It was great to see you there. Yeah, Rustin Kelly. In Madison, one of our favorite artists, and the show was awesome.
We had a cry together.
Yeah, man.
It was dusty in there.
Yeah, it was epic. We are here to talk to you guys about the seasons of training, and we'll get into what we mean by that in just a little bit. But how we wanted to start the show today was with a little bit more of like the hot topics going on in the health and wellness world this week. So if you listened to our episode last week, we did a handful of topics and it went so well, we figured let's make it a segment. So Dylan, you got something for us today to talk about?
Yeah, as I've been scrolling through social media over the last week, the thing that I keep popping up, and opinions on both sides of the issue, is the topic of fasted cardio. So I've seen some people suggesting that it's like this magic solution to burning fat. And then I've seen some people kind of dispelling the myth around how well fasted cardio actually works. So fasted cardio essentially means you do your cardio in the morning on an empty stomach. And there are studies to show that doing so will burn more dietary fat. And I think that's the important distinction, is that dietary fat is different from body fat. So body fat is the result of excess calories over time converting to body fat, because that's how we store those excess calories. And so there's some confusion, again, when we talk about studies, how you take little tidbits or kind of cherry pick information and manipulate that into some sort of causal or outcome-based suggestion for people to adopt and use. And so while we know that fasted cardio may burn more dietary fat, there are other studies to show that over the long term, it actually has no net benefit on burning body fat. So when no carbs are available, you'll use that dietary fat, but your body will adjust and just use carbs later in the day. And so ultimately, I think the takeaway from my perspective is, if you want to do your cardio in the morning before you have anything to eat and you feel good doing that, go for it. I personally like to get a little something in my stomach before I do any kind of exercise. And if your goal is to burn body fat, it's not going to really matter when you do it too much.
Yeah, if it makes you feel better because it is just something that you like doing. I know sometimes I feel better when I am training fasted. I'm just a little bit lighter. And it's a little bit easier to get moving, but yeah, if it's something that, and there are some people, especially like I have a lot of clients, that train early in the morning, and if they don't eat something before they come in, they've learned that the hard way, where, they come in, they're going to, train fasted, or they just forget to eat because, sessions can be early. You can roll right out of bed and head to the gym. And, they begin their workout and they're getting headaches or just sluggish and not feeling well. And a lot of times just having, something in your belly is a good option to fix that. So, again, if you like it, do it. But the reason why most people do it, Dylan, it sounds like, they do it for fat loss. And what you're saying is that there's conflicting research, but generally what we can say for certain is that over long periods of time, it's going to all kind of cancel out. And at the end of the day, fat loss is just calories in, calories out.
That's it, man. Yeah, it's a calorie balance situation, and there is no magic morning run solution to solving that fat loss problem. It is a longevity game, and it requires a good strategy for achieving it. And ultimately, the goal will be there's many different ways to get there, but to get the calories in to be lower than the calories out.
Yeah, and that kind of goes into the broader topic that we wanted to talk about today, the seasons of a training cycle. And what we mean by that is so you've been working out, you've been in the gym consistently, but you can't do the same thing over and over again and expect those same results that you got when you first. And so it's important to switch up your programming from time to time to prevent all kinds of things, and we're about to get into that. But I think a good place to start when we think about training is understanding how adaptations are made with training. And so there's the SAID principle, which is specific adaptations to imposed demands. And essentially all that means is that the body adapts to the stresses that you put on it. And so you will improve at the skills you practice. So you are going to get better at the things that you do in the gym. But it's impossible to program something that is going to cover every single base of adaptations. And so it's important to pay attention to how your body's feeling and the adaptations that it is making so that you know when it's time to make a change.
Yeah, one of our early episodes, we talked about the different kind of modalities of training and exercise. And we talked about why, in our opinion, most people would benefit from strength training more than some of these other modalities like cardio and high intensity interval training and yoga, etc. And I think it's important to note that all of them have their benefits, and to try to concurrently pursue all of the benefits of the adaptations that come with them at the same time is challenging. And so, what we're going to talk a bit about today is how you can pursue the heart health benefits of cardio in one season and really focus on strength training in another season. And if your goal is fat loss, why strength training is maybe the best adaptation and cardio is maybe a bit overrated for that. But how do we program not only for 12 weeks through something off the shelf like basic muscle, but how do we think about a full calendar year of training? And how do we give our bodies these different adaptations so that we're reaping all of the benefits of the different ways that a person can train?
Yeah, and the one of the big reasons why it's important to be updating your programming and changing these goals is because of the plateau problem.
Hmm.
And so a plateau is exactly what it sounds like. It is when you have stopped progressing in the gym, or with whatever whatever you're into. If you're working on, there's going to be plateaus in mobility, there's going to be plateaus in cardio, speed, explosiveness, strength, hypertrophy, everything. At some point, you're going to run into a plateau. And, but there's a number of different reasons why that plateau is taking place.
Yeah, and these things happen all the time, right? So you're running a program and you're in a certain phase of that program, and that program's giving you a target rep range, and you're increasing your rate weight and getting to the higher end of that rep range. But at some point you might find that it's hard to get another rep or to add a little more weight to the bar, and that's essentially what a plateau is. And so I think you can talk a bit more about why that occurs. But there's some different strategies you can leverage in the interest of thinking about sort of different seasons and training and different ways to train to overcome some of these plateaus that are really useful.
Yeah, and so some of the reasons why plateau might occur, one, it could just be that the program, it could be a programming problem. So it could be as simple as not enough stimulus to create change. You're not getting that progressive overload. But that can also come from working out randomly. If you're not following a program with a specific goal and reason for why you're doing what you're doing. And then also, maybe you are following a workout program, but you're not actually spending the time to track. So if you're just going into the gym and randomly hoping that you're going to get better and you're wondering why, certain muscles have stopped growing, take a look, actually take a look at your workout logs or start a workout log and, make sure that you're paying attention to what's happening with those weights. But that's just one thing. That's the programming side of
Yeah,
things.
and
That's
on the
oh, go ahead.
programming front, I wanna say that this is where uh a coach can really be helpful. Like somebody you're checking in with on a weekly basis that can kind of monitor that log and the progress you're making and has the knowledge to know when it's time to maybe make some modifications to that program. The way that works with an off-the-shelf program like Basic Muscle is through phases. So you'll see phases in the program that are based on research that tells us on sort of specific timelines when most people tend to plateau. And we talked last time about the importance of novelty in training. And so a great way to overcome some of these plateaus is just by switching up the adaptation you're pursuing. And so that can be achieved really in two ways: through a modification to the program, which again, off the shelf looks like different phases, the rep ranges change, the exercises themselves change, or through working with a coach on a regular basis who you're kind of iteratively going through the process of change to ensure that you're not hitting these plateaus and or overcoming them.
Just a badass plug for Basic Muscle there, Dylan. I mean,
Yeah.
you're crushing it, man. I love that. It's great. But there are other factors why that are outside of the gym, and because a lot of times people think that, I'm not progressing. There's something wrong with the workouts. There's something wrong that I'm doing in the gym, and there are so many other things that are like what I'd call like daily life factors. So what's your diet like? What is your sleep? And what levels of stress are you putting on yourself outside of the gym? If you are not eating right, if you're not getting enough sleep, if your stress levels are high, those are all going to have an impact. And it just one of those things is going to have an impact. And if it's all three, then of course you're going to have a hard time making progress in the gym because you don't have the capacity to do so.
Yeah, not enough protein, not enough food, right? Like there are days where I don't eat enough carbs and my workout I'm not able to progress in the same way that I was previously because maybe I'd eaten a bit more the day before or in the hours leading up to my workout. So yeah, those life factors are key too.
Yeah. But so if you can honestly look in the mirror and, say, my diet's good, I'm getting enough sleep, stresses, I'm taking care of my stress. And then the programming, I'm following a program, and you're still, you could still run into a plateau that way. But that is a really good sign that it's time to move to the next season in training.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, a friend of ours, Russ, was over today. We were going through the deadlift together, and he asked me, he's running Basic Muscle, and he said, "What do I do afterwards?" And not to keep plugging Basic Muscle, but Basic Muscle was really written and intended to be something you could run over and over and over again, because it does account for some of the things that we're going to talk about in this next point, where it's looking at bilateral and unilateral movements. It's looking at lower rep ranges and higher rep ranges. It's looking at more hypertrophy focused tempo, and it's looking at more explosive type tempos. So some of that is what leads to plateaus as well. Is if you have a program that's more singularly focused on strength or on hypertrophy or on athleticism and explosiveness, that's when you might want to look to a new program, right?
Yeah, and so one of the risks that you run if you are doing the same thing over and over again in the gym or running that same program, over and over again, you're doing the same. I've got I've had clients that, come in, they're like, oh yeah, I work out twice a week, but I've been doing the same routine that I did, when I was a high schooler,
Yeah.
for the last, 15, 20 years, sometimes even longer, because that's all they know. They only know how to do that one workout. And what you're risking there is over specialization in training. And what that a risk for that over specialization is really is overuse. So I mean, the big things there is you're going to put yourself at risk for overuse injuries, and you're also going to put yourself at risk for neglecting muscle groups. So if you're doing the same thing over and over again and moving in the same way, odds are, we're all human, and we probably don't have perfect mechanics, for anything that we're doing. So, if you do the same thing over and over again without, trying to change some of those mechanics, or just changing the stimulus, you're really putting yourself at risk for these overuse injuries. And then you're also just going to have some muscle groups that just get insanely weak.
Yeah, so there's this plateau issue, but there's also this injury risk, this imbalance risk that comes with just training in one way. Now, you may be able to follow the same program for 15 years, 2 days a week, and continue to progress, but that likely comes if it's really all in bilateral plane, right? It's barbell, squat, deadlift. You're not doing anything unilateral. You're not doing anything rotational. You're going to start to have problems, to the point you made before about training adaptations. Whatever you do a lot is what you're going to be good at, but everything else is going to suffer a bit. You're putting yourself at risk of losing some of those skills. So in the interest of seasons, it's important to consider, maybe take some time to really focus on those bilateral strength focused movements, but to also ensure that there's a season every year where you're also pursuing other adaptations that are important, whether it's cardio for your heart, or it's rotational for, bending over in the car to pick something up out of the back seat so you don't hurt your back, or
Totally.
it's unilateral to work out some of those imbalances.
Yeah. So I mean, you had so many great points that I want to unpack them, one by one. And I think one of the first things, that I do, if you start to, to work with us, one thing that you will note is the infatuation. If you've run basic muscle, like, you will see the infatuation with unilateral exercises, simply meaning, one side and then the other. And that's because it really does highlight, some different muscle groups, and those individual sides, to really help. Balance is one of those things where, I guess we're technically striving for balance, but we're never going to reach it. It's not one of those things that true symmetry is not. It shouldn't be something that we're trying to attain, but we want to make sure that we're not neglecting our weaker side, by only doing, bilateral exercises, or things that you use, both legs or both arms at the same time. So, whether that is, Bulgarian split squats, or lunges, pistol squats, there's, and that's just, lower body. There's so many different ways you can train unilaterally, that are going to be an awesome change up to what you're doing.
Yeah, no doubt, no doubt about it. So how do you do this?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think that is, if you're looking at your own programming, one of the first things, well, I guess the place to start is to set a goal. That for me, that's been the coolest thing about looking at my programming over the last years. It's stuff that I want to work on. There are goals that you have to set, and make them specific, make them fun, make them something that you actually, instead of it just being like, I want to lose weight. Well, sure. I mean, what you mean is you want to lose fat and build muscle. You want to look better. But how does that look for you? Are there exercises that you want to get better at? Are there skills that you want to have? Do you play sports? Do you have hobbies that you could get better at by improving some aspects of your training. So, I think it's important to set a goal, and then from there, you reverse engineer the training to match that. I mean, so you have a goal, and then from there, it becomes a heck of a lot easier to put the pieces into place.
Yeah, for me, I think there's some advantages to living in Wisconsin where we have seasons. Um, and I like to align my seasons in training very much with the seasons of nature.
Okay.
So in the spring, summertime, I love to play golf and I play some rec sports. And as I get, into my mid 30s, it's harder to just get off the couch and go play kickball than it used to be and not
Yeah.
risk injury. So the winter is when I really will focus on the bilateral, the deadlift, the squat, really build pack on muscle.
The gym
Um,
stuff.
the gym stuff, yeah. And then as the seasons change and we get more into spring and summer, that's when I start to look to more of these athletic strength adaptations and rotational strength and things that'll benefit my golf game and will benefit my ability to run around in the backyard and fuck off at a friend's cookout
Yeah.
without pulling my hamstring or whatever.
Right.
So and as the weather gets warmer, it's nicer to be outside. I might go for a run a bit more and start to focus a bit on my cardiovascular health.
Hmm.
So there's ways that you can think about this, whether you're in Wisconsin or not. But aligning, that's why we call them seasons in training. It's just important to note that sort of in a program itself, you should see some seasonality, rather some phases where the adaptation you're pursuing changes some because of the importance of novelty. And we know that, sort of 4 to 6 weeks with a singular focus is about the maximum to that plateau issue. And then after that, you should look to change that adaptation some, but still within that singular program, it could be, again, very focused on, bilateral strength. And so maybe after 12 weeks, you look to a new season, you look to a new adaptation, you think about the other things that are important to overall health and fitness, and you look to different types of programs that may offer those sorts of adaptations. The ultimate goal could still be lose fat, build muscle, right? You can achieve that through athletic programming. You can achieve that through more explosive movements. You can achieve it through unilateral movements. In fact, if you've been doing strictly bilateral movements for 12 weeks, you're going to put on muscle by changing the focus and adaptation because of that importance of novelty. So I think it's really important to consider this. I like your point about kind of stepping back, looking at the macro, and then reverse engineering what's the year going to look like for me with regards to how I want to kind of schedule my different seasons of training focus.
Yeah, and I think it's also important to, we talk about having a focus, but that doesn't mean that's the only thing that you're doing. If you want to, you know, build up your squat, that doesn't mean that you're not doing any sort of cardio or mobility work. It just means that's your focus because, like we said earlier, it's really hard to improve at all the things constantly. So, it's important to pick the thing that you want to be focusing on now. But if you want to, kind of like smooth over those plateaus or minimize them as much as possible, it is important to, while you're having your focus, say, say it's summer. So you're doing your outside stuff. You're being more, you're maybe a little bit more cardio focused. That doesn't mean that you just don't do the strength training stuff. It just means that those things, you're not going to try to PR your squat while, your focus is trying to, get your 5K time down or, get your golf score down. So it's important to not neglect the other aspects of training. And that's where having a really thoughtful program is important. And so I suppose like this is as good of a time as any to, to talk about a new venture that we've started launching here, which is our basic coaching program. So, Dylan, you're the plug god. So why don't you talk about that a little bit more?
Yeah, so you can take these programs off the shelf and you can run them and you can have a lot of success with them. But there is so much value in having a sounding board, a coach, somebody to check in with, someone to evaluate where you're at, someone who knows how to program nutrition and diet into the individual aspects of your life. No program off the shelf is going to be perfect for every person. It's impossible. We're all so incredibly different. And so what our basic coaching program is going to offer is the opportunity for us to work with you to learn about what your life looks like, to learn about how you live. What do you do for a living? What does a day look like for you? How do you currently eat? And how can we work with that to build a program that's specific to you to meet whatever goal you have over a specific period of time, and then work iteratively over the long term to pursue different seasons, to pursue different adaptations, to evaluate when we're hitting a plateau and consider different adaptations to overcome it, so that you can have a weekly opportunity to consult with us, and that opportunity for us then to make the necessary modifications so that it's whatever you're doing is successful and aligned with whatever you're in pursuit of at that period in time.
I was looking up what iteratively meant because you said it twice in the
Is that too big of a word?
No, it's a great. No, I'm usually the one with the words, but I don't think I've ever heard that one before. So iteratively is your word of the day, everybody.
My background is in like systems and systems thinking and like continual improvement. So iteration is really important in achieving new goals. And sorry for the difficult word.
No, I didn't say. Yeah, no, it's perfect. This is an educational podcast, so we're always learning. We're always learning. So yeah, if that's something that interests you, if you want to learn, not just new cool words from Dylan, but you want to learn, more about a comprehensive training program, reach out at Instagram at the Basic Trainer, or you can either email. Either one of us, Matt or Dylan, Dylan at thebasictrainer.com. Now let's move to the Q&A. We have a couple more listener questions. So Dylan, why don't you get into this first one here? I just see on the sheet here, it just says eggs.
I'm actually gonna throw in a third.
Okay. All right.
Because it's in alignment with the conversation we just had, and maybe we'll offer an opportunity for us to make one more point on the issue. And it's not a question that's been asked to me specifically, but it's a question that I've asked of myself. And it's a question that I think a lot of people maybe have in mind, which is, how do I win a marathon and look like a bodybuilder at the same time?
Okay.
And I don't know if you want to take it, but I have a very thoughtful answer in mind.
No, Dylan, I don't want to. Let's see. I want to see where you're going with this, and then I'll hop in when I feel comfortable.
Yeah, the answer is you can't.
Okay, cool.
But it's something that, I've struggled with in the past, and it's very much about what we just talked about, right? Like, there was a time in my life where I wanted to strength train and look fantastic and build muscle while simultaneously being successful at triathlons. And just aligned with the points we just made, it's really difficult to be excellent at both. And It's just another reason why these seasons in training are so incredibly important. You can spend 3 months really focusing on packing on that muscle, and then you can spend the next 3 really focused on swimming, running, and biking and cardiovascular health to be really good at that triathlon, or if it's running in that marathon. But to do both at the same time will be counter to each other, and you'll be very average at both. And so that's why this coaching that we just introduced is really important. That's why good programming is really important. And that's why listening to our podcast, so that we can continue to talk about the nuance in all of these different training opportunities, is really important. And with that,
all right. So to answer your question, Dylan, you can't. You can't. You can't. All right. Let's talk about eggs.
Yeah. So eggs are a funny one, man. Like, I feel like our friends are always sending us pictures of the egg crack in their pan, and it's like, bragging about the color of the yolk and eggs. There is so much marketing in eggs. It's
Right.
it's it's really confusing, right? Like you can go buy 99 a dozen eggs for 99 cents at Woodman's. And then you can spend $8.99 on Vital Farms pastured eggs at Whole Foods. And that's a significant increase in price. So why are we spending that much more on these pasture raised eggs versus these conventional mass produced eggs? So let's just talk about like the different categories of egg
Hmm.
and a bit about what they actually mean so that then when the people that are listening to this podcast go to the store, they have the best information possible to make that purchasing decision. The first thing I want to talk about is on the yolk thing. So like I pay attention to it all the time, right? Like sometimes you crack an egg and the yolk is like orange. It's like so dark orange. And then other times you crack it and it's like the palest of yellows.
Hmm.
So there's a reason for that. There's maybe some misconceptions in what it actually means. Um, but typically a yellow, more pale yolk suggests that the chicken had a diet higher in wheat. So you'll typically see that in more of the conventional mass farm eggs. The oranger yolk is going to be fed a diet higher in carotenoids, which are also the things that make carrots orange, for example. And so there are some studies that suggest that pastured or pasture raised eggs may be healthier because of that color of the yolk. They have increased omega-3 fatty acids. They have these carotenoids. They maybe have some other minerals as a result of the diet that the chicken ate. But you'll also find some competing research that suggests that the actual health benefits of certain eggs are pretty minimal. So it's sort of it's ultimately up to you how important that health factor is, right? Like it could be pretty minimal. There may be some research to suggest that you may get some additional benefit out of what the chicken ate, ultimately making it to you. You are what you eat, I've heard said before.
Yeah.
But that's what the color of the yolk is all about.
Yeah, I think so the way that I look at eggs more so from a personal health standpoint, it's more this one is more ethical for me, and and why you're about that's what we're going to get into. So you just see eggs, just like the cheapest of cheap eggs at the grocery store. That is a caged chicken.
Mhm.
So I mean, it's a horrible, like, if there's enough videos on the internet now where you can go see some of those like big chicken, houses and poultry farms, and you can see the conditions that they're in. And it's tiny.
Yeah, I mean, they literally live in a cage. There's very minimal freedom of movement, bird on top of bird. It's really sad to see. Food is expensive. I'm not here to suggest or tell you what you should or shouldn't buy, but you shouldn't buy caged eggs. um,
Yeah.
and there has to be some health impact and all that as well. Like the life of the
Just
chicken is so sad. The food they're fed is such shit.
yeah.
At caged eggs, the really, really cheap ones, ethically, from a health point of view, are really low bar. Like they you can spend a tiny bit more maybe to pursue the interest of the animal itself and probably your own health interest as well.
Yeah, and so now this next one is where the marketing really starts to come in. So then you go from caged eggs. So then you'll see the first buzzword, which is cage free. So first thought, oh my God, they don't live in cages. It's so great. Well, these chickens, for the most part, they're still living inside. Um, they don't necessarily have access to outside, and just because they're cage free, it doesn't mean that their living conditions are much happier.
Yeah, the definition, so to be called cage free, it means that the chickens, the hens, they're able to roam vertically and horizontally in indoor barns and
Yeah.
have at least 1 square foot of floor space each. So think about that. I mean, that's still chicken on top of chicken. What does that tell you about the caged eggs or the caged chicken?
Right.
If
Yeah, that's bad.
the cage free ones have a 12-inch by 12-inch box of space, that not a physical box, but like a footprint
Right.
to roam. I mean, it's not significantly improved. And I think there's plenty of people that see cage free and they think, oh, that's a significant improvement in the life of that
Nailing
chicken.
it.
Yeah. So a lot of
Yeah.
marketing there, not a huge improvement from an ethics point of view for sure.
Right. And so then the next level up from that is free range, which, now we're starting to get into, um, a little bit better, the conditions for the chickens, or I shouldn't say little, they sound significantly better. I believe, do they have to have access? Do they have to have outside access to be considered free range?
Yeah, so it's sort of like cage free plus. So they
Yeah.
they have that extra space that the cage free hens have, but they also have to have some access to an outside area. Now, from my understanding, there's no real uniform standard regarding how long they're outside or even what that outside space looks like.
Yeah. Is it even
So,
like really like grass?
exactly. Yeah, they're still probably being fed, shit. Um,
Yeah, and none of this
it,
has to do with the like
none of
all
it.
of these things. Like they all could be getting fed, any, anything. At
Yeah,
this point,
for the
any
most part,
standard
they
chicken
probably are.
feeds. Yeah,
Yeah, I mean, it's how do you, get the most yield out of the least expense in agriculture, and so that typically means feed as inexpensively as possible. And so caged, cage free, and free range, nothing to do with the diet, everything
right,
of the chicken, everything to do with the space that they have and the access to the outside, although that access to the outside is very poorly defined.
right. And then, and so that leads us into, the last major category, which is, of course, pasture raised, which should be, this one has the best uh homes, for the chickens, but so they have regular access to outdoor space. Um, but what does that really mean though?
Means they have regular access to a large outdoor space that's covered in grass or some other sort of vegetation. So this starts to get a bit more into the diet of the hen because if they're roaming outside and there's grass or other vegetation, that means that they will eat that.
Yep, and the
So it
bugs that are in the that are out
totally.
there. Yeah,
Yep. So it's less likely, mass wheat kind of product and more of a grazing pasture experience, which I think ethically is obviously better, but may then also come with some of those darker yolk health benefits that I mentioned previously. It's worth noting that there's not really a uniform certification entity for pasture raised. So there's these different certification entities that define a bit differently how much pasture they have. So again, like this whole certification game, it's a marketing play to some degree. So you always have to keep that in mind. Um, how do you make your buying decision around eggs?
I mean, I'm trying to go as local as possible,
That's
so, chickens have kind of been like this rage of a pet, quote unquote, for the last handful of years. So it seems like somebody with chickens is not that far away. Now I live in the woods, so, it's a little easier for me. But I mean, even down by you, especially in the summertime when there are farmers markets,
you
how
bet.
many different options are there for eggs, and you can, that's a regular recurring option for you.
Yeah.
So as someone that is always aware of the constant marketing that is happening around, products in the stores, and especially these big labels. I'm going to try and find somebody where, if I want to, I can go over and see the chickens and see what type of conditions they're in, see what type of food they're eating, and what kind of lives they have. So, for me and for the majority of people, I'm not going to say that everybody is going to have access to, somebody local that is, that can get them eggs. But, not only is that going to be the best as far as like the ethically, for the most part, it's also going to be pretty dang cost effective too. Because if you're spending money on, like you said, those Vital Farms eggs, a dozen's pretty dang expensive, and usually you can get a better deal with somebody local.
Yeah, I'm in a bit more of an urban environment than you, but in the summer we absolutely buy our eggs from farmers markets. In the winter, when there are less access to farmers markets, you could still go directly to the farm in the suburbs. I'll go in the grocery store, and more local eggs are finding their way into the big grocery stores too. So I typically look for the pasture raised eggs, although I have a really hard time paying $7.99 for the more mass produced Vital Farms pasture raised eggs, but there's some more local pasture raised eggs. So you could look at the carton and see where they're coming from. Typically,
Hmm.
if it's closer by, the footprint's smaller from an environmental point of view, and you're supporting your local economy, which I think is important too. So, I've found eggs in grocery stores around me here that are pasture raised that are, from within 100 miles of where I am, and are $3.99 a dozen, which is, cost effective. And I'm willing to make that sort of investment in eggs, which I eat a whole lot of.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, so I think we've thoroughly exhausted the egg
The
discussion.
only other thing I want to say on eggs is
I
you'll see
guess not.
organic, you'll see organic too.
Yeah,
Um, and so that might make you feel a little bit better about it. That just means the feed that they're giving them is organic.
right.
So they could still be pasture, or they could still be, sorry, cage free or free range or even conventional in their living condition. But the mass wheat feed that they're giving them or whatever is just required to be organic for them to put organic on the carton of eggs.
Yep. Yeah, exactly. Okay, the next question comes from a client of mine who is a fellow, you know, uh, grab a handful of spinach out of the container and shove it in her mouth type. But she asked about uh, oxalates. And that's kind of been a buzz term that's been debated a lot recently, and certain health gurus will tell you that that's the reason why you have inflammation. So I guess like the place to start is what are oxalates?
Yeah, so oxalates are naturally occurring compounds in plants. You'll see them in things like green spinach, soy, legumes, nuts, and their purpose in plants is to bind to excess calcium to get rid of the calcium, which is really important in plants. Too much calcium in the plant's going to die. So it has a really important function in a plant. In humans, then the concern is that it's going to bind to and decrease calcium in humans where we don't really have that concern, and perhaps to other minerals like iron, leading to these health issues that you mentioned, everything from gut problems to just general inflammation in the body. Now, what actually happens in humans is a new compound is formed and we just excrete it as waste. So it's really not a big deal in humans at all. This is again where we're extrapolating. It's like we see with other nutrition studies where you cherry pick something out of a mouse study and then you take it all the way over here and you make these causal conclusions about what occurs in a human being, which is just a totally different creature. Sort of what's occurring here. You have this plant process that's really important for the plant, and now we're making these causal kind of conclusions about what is going to occur in the human body, which again, our metabolism, it's all very different, right? Now, there's a subset of people that may want to be a bit cautious. And if you're in the subset of people, you will likely be advised to be cautious by your doctor because these are people that have had kidney stones in the past or are at risk of kidney stones for any reason. So unless your doctor's telling you you're at risk of kidney stones, you should avoid oxalates. eat your spinach. The benefits that come from to avoid these healthy foods altogether because of the risks of these oxalates is a significant overreaction.
Yeah. Now, one thing that I did learn while researching this is that if so oxalates do, like you said, it will bind to excess calcium, but it can also do that with other minerals, iron, magnesium. And so, like in spinach's case, which is a plant that has iron in it, if you are trying to get the most iron out of that, if you are deficient in iron, then it might benefit you to gently cook the spinach to allow for that iron absorption. But as far as the oxalates go, for causing inflammation, that is one of those things where if that's the case, so if you're one of these people that, like Dylan said, if you're at risk for kidney stones, then sure, your doctor would probably advise you to avoid some of these foods. If you are a person that is sensitive to these higher oxalate foods, but otherwise aren't necessarily predisposed to kidney stones or have a history of it, the bigger question might be why, because like you said, Dylan, our gut should be able to excrete that, to process it and excrete it. So if you are unable to, it's worth asking the question, well, what's the problem? Why is this the case? And not demonize a really, really wonderful group of foods.
Yeah, and if you're anything like me in the past, your gut issues were caused by other things like stress and worrying about the oxalates in the food.
Yeah, right.
And in my own head, I decided maybe it was the oxalates, not oxalates specifically, but some other thing that some influencer took a food, found an isolated compound in it, and decided to scare people with it to drive attention to their message. And you see that all the time. You see it with phytates is another one, very similar sort of compound, phytic acid. It's in like oats, and same sort of deal. It's going to bind to minerals and your body's going to suffer significantly because of it. Well, oats and, spinach in the oxalate case, they have a lot of these minerals in them, right? So like to cut them out of your diet is going to put you at risk of
Right.
having less of these minerals in your body overall.
And on the whole, that's not the reason why you're fucked up. That's
Right.
that's not the reason. That's not the reason
People
why.
love to find something simple to blame, and it's never, ever that simple. And that's what's now exploded in the wellness, fitness, nutrition space is isolating a compound, making people believe that it's scary, again, to drive eyeballs and attention to their message. On the cooking point, cooking spinach or any of these high oxalate foods will also reduce the oxalate content. So again, if for whatever reason you're concerned about it, or again, your doctor's suggesting that you limit these things, cooking them down can help with that a bit as well.
Yeah, well said. All right, let's wrap up the show. So if you guys are liking what we're doing here, please, please, please share the message. Share the show with somebody that you think that might take some of the lessons that we're talking about here. Give us a subscribe on Spotify or iTunes, wherever you listen to podcasts, and take a look at our YouTube channel. So we really, really appreciate it. And also, reach out. We love to hear from you guys. The feedback so far has been really, really helpful. So if you have something that you want to say or have a question that you want us to talk about on the show, reach out. The best way is probably through our Instagram, either at The Basic Trainer or Better Basics Podcast. And Dylan, you're going to bring it home today with your sad song, your lift to sad song of the week.
My lift to sad song of the week.
Yeah.
This week I'm going with this is a band that I did not listen to in high school that I would have loved in high school. I don't even know if they were around, but they're very much in the brand of band that I listened to back in the day. and they're called Hot Mulligan.
Oh yeah, no, they weren't. No, they are new.
They're
These
newer.
are
Okay,
these are new guys. Yeah,
new guys. The song is called OG Blue Sky. If I played it on my phone into my microphone, would I get in trouble with Spotify?
I think we would get. Yeah, I
Okay,
mean,
but you're gonna
I
have to
think.
go.
Yeah,
You're gonna have to
please.
go look it up
We
yourself.
in our heads, we had it set up where we would be able to play. The song would start playing like right about now, and then we would fade out of the episode to it. And maybe in the future, we'll be able to set something up like that. But right now, it's just not possible. So
Spotify used to have that feature, and unfortunately, they got rid of it.
screwing us, man.
Maybe we'll sing our way out one time.
I like that. That's not a bad idea. All right, everybody. Thank you so much. We really appreciate it. And until next time, peace.